This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy. We go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive? We're going to be tackling some pretty big ideas today. From the Heliox podcast and articles, we've got these four narratives they keep bringing up: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and this one that's, well, kind of trippy, quantum-like uncertainty.
And it's not just abstract stuff. I mean, these concepts can help us understand things like, well, huge issues we're facing, climate change, even the whole future of AI.
Right, like these aren't just like philosophical ideas to kick around. They have real-world implications.
Yeah, and what I found really interesting is how Heliox presents these, not as separate things, but as like interconnected ways of looking at the world.
Interconnected. Okay, I like that.
It's about kind of moving beyond, rigid categories and just embracing a more interconnected, dynamic view of reality.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. First up, boundary dissolution. This one really hit home for me with their example of microbiome, all the bacteria and stuff living inside us. It totally changes how we think about the human body. We're not just this self-contained unit anymore.
Right, yeah.
It's more like this whole interconnected ecosystem. Have you ever really thought about how interwoven we are with the world around us?
Absolutely. And I think that's what boundary dissolution really pushes us to do, to see connections between things we might usually keep separate. Like, take climate change, for example. We often think about it as an environmental problem.
Right.
But it's so much more than that. It's economic, it's a social justice issue, public health. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah, you're right. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but you're only looking at one piece at a time. You got to see the whole picture.
Exactly.
Which brings us to adaptive complexity, this idea that the world is constantly in flux. I always think of it like watching a city grow and change, buildings going up, neighborhoods transforming, new technologies popping up all the time.
Yeah, it's never static. And grasping adaptive complexity is key because it helps us anticipate and navigate those changes. I mean, the pandemic really highlighted this, wouldn't you say?
Totally.
The virus was adapting with all the new variants, and then our response to it had to adapt as well. Everything from like mask mandates to how quickly we developed vaccines.
For sure. And speaking of the pandemic, that leads perfectly into embodied knowledge. I remember Heliox made this point that even with all the data, all the scientific research we had, frontline healthcare workers often had these insights that, weren't in any textbook.
Right.
They just had this deep understanding from being in the trenches, from their direct experiences.
Embodied knowledge is a really good reminder that intelligence isn't just about data and algorithms. It's also about intuition, wisdom gained from firsthand experience. Think about, a surgeon's skill or a musician's intuition or even just your own gut feeling when you're making a tough decision.
It's funny you should say that. I have a friend who's amazing at picking stocks. And she can't always explain, the logic behind it, but she just has this knack for knowing which ones are going to take off. It's almost like she has this sixth sense or something.
Yeah.
Do you think that could be a form of embodied knowledge?
It very well could be. It's that ability to draw on a wealth of experience and just, subconscious patterns. And, well, I guess that brings us to that last narrative, which, to be honest, can be a little tricky, quantum-like uncertainty.
Yeah, this one definitely makes you think.
Think of it like this. You're flipping a coin. There's a 50-50 chance for heads or tails, but you can't predict the exact outcome until it actually lands.
Okay.
It's not that we can't know anything. It's more that there are these limits to prediction. We have to kind of work with probabilities, you see.
Okay, so it's not about saying we're clueless, but more about accepting that the future isn't always set in stone.
Exactly. And think about climate change models. They don't give us one definite prediction. They explore a range of potential futures based on different, factors. It's more about understanding possibilities, not just certainties.
That's a really helpful way to think about it. So we've got these four narratives: dissolving boundaries, acknowledging constant change, valuing that hands-on wisdom, and accepting the limits of prediction. It's a pretty powerful set of tools, for understanding the world, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is that Heliox doesn't just lay out these abstract concepts. They actually show how they can be applied to real-world issues like responding to pandemics, thinking about the ethics of AI, designing better cities, even understanding how social media works.
It really is fascinating how these ideas pop up everywhere. And that actually makes me think, we were talking about AI ethics earlier. Could these narratives, these ways of thinking, could they change how we actually approach AI development?
That's a great question.
It's something to ponder, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we can dig into that a bit more after the break.
Thank you for being curious and subscribing, following, liking, rating, and reviewing our podcast episodes. Your support really helps build a vibrant Heliox community.
So we're back. And I've been thinking about this idea, how these four narratives, like boundary dissolution and all that, could change the way we think about AI ethics.
Yeah, it's a big one. I mean, where do we even start?
Right, like it's such a complex topic already, and then throwing these new lenses on top of it.
Exactly. Well, maybe we could start with that first narrative, boundary dissolution. Right now, we tend to think of AI as separate from, human intelligence, almost like it's just a tool we use.
Right.
But as AI gets more and more sophisticated, that line starts to get a bit, blurry.
Yeah, for sure.
So thinking about AI ethics through this lens of boundary dissolution means we have to consider AI systems as kind of more integrated with human values and needs, not just as some isolated technology.
So instead of just asking, can AI do this task, we're also asking, how will this AI impact people's lives, like on an emotional and social level?
Yeah, that's a really, really important shift in how we think about it. It's recognizing that AI doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's deeply intertwined with human society. And then if we bring in adaptive complexity, things get even more interesting.
Oh, yeah, because AI is constantly learning and evolving.
Exactly.
Which means we can't always predict exactly how it'll behave in the future, right?
Right, and that's one of the biggest challenges when we're talking about AI ethics. I mean, if we can't fully predict how AI will act, how can we make sure it's ethical?
Yeah, that's a little unnerving, to be honest. It feels like a bit of a black box situation.
It is. It really is. But adaptive complexity kind of encourages us to think about ethical frameworks that are themselves flexible, able to evolve alongside AI.
So it's not about setting, like, fixed rules.
Right. It's more about creating principles that can adapt to new situations as they come up.
Okay, so the goalposts are always moving.
Exactly.
So the rules of the game have to be able to move, too. But doesn't that create kind of a slippery slope? I mean, if the ethical boundaries are always in flux, how do we stop them from just, like, disappearing entirely?
Yeah, and that's a valid concern. It's a crucial part of this conversation for sure. We need to find that balance between, allowing flexibility, but also making sure that core ethical values are always there, at the forefront of how we develop AI. And this is where I think embodied knowledge comes in.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, could AI be more ethical if it learned more like we do, through real-world experiences, not just data sets?
That's interesting. It makes me think about when I was first learning to drive, no matter how much I read the driver's manual, nothing could have prepared me for actually being behind the wheel, dealing with traffic, making those split-second decisions.
Exactly. There's this whole field now called embodied AI. And they're exploring the very concept. Imagine robots learning to, grasp objects or navigate different environments or even interact with people in a way that helps them develop a sense of empathy. It's about recognizing that intelligence goes beyond just, pure computation.
So instead of feeding AI a bunch of data about human emotions, we'd let it, like, actually interact with people and figure things out in social situations.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. But it also feels a little, well, risky, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It raises a ton of questions about how we design those interactions and, make sure humans are safe. But I think the potential is huge. I mean, we could create AI that's more intuitive, more adaptable, and ultimately more aligned with our values. And, we can't forget about quantum-like uncertainty in all of this. AI systems, well, they can be unpredictable, even with the best intentions.
Right, back to the coin toss. So how do we navigate that ethically? Do we just have to accept that there's always going to be some level of risk?
Well, I don't think it's about blind acceptance. It's more about acknowledging that we can't always predict or control AI perfectly. It means building safeguards and having ways to oversee what AI is doing. being transparent about the uncertainties that exist, and being ready to adjust our ethical frameworks as we learn more. And one interesting approach I've seen is developing AI that uses, well, it's called probabilistic reasoning.
So instead of giving one answer, the AI might say, okay, here are three possible outcomes, and each one has this probability of happening.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of AI could be really helpful in situations where, there's a lot of unknown information or where the environment is constantly changing, like self-driving cars.
Oh yeah, trying to navigate city streets.
Right, exact.
So we're saying like embrace the uncertainty, build AI that can work with it, and just be ready to adjust our ethical thinking as we go. It's kind of like exploring uncharted territory, isn't it?
It really is.
But, I keep thinking about this. Heliox didn't just talk about AI. They also applied these narratives to other things, like pandemic preparedness, urban design, even how we use social media.
Right.
We should talk about that a bit more, I think, to really get a sense of how big these ideas are.
I completely agree. So where do you want to go next? Maybe how cities could be designed differently.
Yeah, let's dive into that. It's really amazing how these four narratives, boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, all of them, they can be applied to so many different things. Last time we were talking about AI ethics, but the Heliox stuff also looks at how these ideas could transform urban design. I mean, how we design cities.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And, urban planning has traditionally been very compartmentalized. You have separate departments for transportation, housing, parks, all that.
Right. It's all very siloed.
Exactly. But boundary dissolution, it encourages us to think about a city as this complex system where everything is connected.
So instead of all these separate departments, we're looking at how transportation affects housing and parks and vice versa.
Yeah, it's about seeing the city as kind of this living organism, not just, a machine.
Okay, I like that, a living city. But how does adaptive complexity fit into this whole urban design thing? I mean, cities are always changing, right?
Oh, they are, constantly. Population grow, neighborhoods change, new technologies pop up all the time. So understanding adaptive complexity means designing cities that can respond to that,
Okay.
Cities that can adapt as things change. It's moving away from those static master plans and being more flexible.
So it's like building a city that can learn and grow, almost like an ecosystem.
Exactly.
That's a really cool idea, but I mean, how do we actually make that happen? It sounds very theoretical.
Well, it's about building in, feedback loops. Imagine a city that uses real-time data on traffic, pollution, even how many people are walking around.
Okay.
And it uses all that data to adjust traffic lights, change bus routes, even parking availability.
So the city's constantly adjusting itself.
Yeah, optimizing for the people living there.
That's wild. And what about embodied knowledge? Where does that come in?
Well, think about the people who live in a city who work there. They have so much knowledge about their neighborhoods, their needs, how the city really works, day to day.
Right.
So embodied knowledge means, we have to tap into that, use that wisdom when we're designing.
So we're talking about actually engaging with residents, getting their feedback, and incorporating that into how we plan the city.
Yeah, it's not just experts deciding how a city should be. It's about designing it with the people who live there.
It's like co-creating a city. I like that. And this kind of ties into quantum-like uncertainty too, right? We can't predict exactly how a city will change, but we can design it so it's ready for anything.
Right. It's about being flexible and adaptable, embracing the uncertainty.
So we accept that we don't have all the answers. And instead of trying to control everything, we're building a city that's resilient. A city that can just roll with the pushes.
Exactly. It's about accepting that cities are complex, they're full of uncertainty, and then designing a city that can actually thrive, despite all that. And what's exciting is that this applies to so much more than just cities. I mean, we can use these ideas for organizations, ecosystem, even huge global problems like climate change.
It's like we've been given this whole new way to see the world. And it's really inspiring to think about what we could achieve with this. So to wrap things up, what's the key takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
I'd say these four narratives: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty, they give us a powerful way to understand the world. And not just understand it, but actually navigate it. They push us to think differently, to see connections, to value everyone's perspective, and to design things that are adaptable, things that are built to last.
Beautifully said. That's a perfect note to end on. This has been The Deep Dive, and we hope these ideas have sparked your curiosity and inspired you to see the world, well, maybe a little differently. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.